We have paid the price of admission and have dived headlong into Ark Nova. We're going to share our thoughts with you on this game here today on Legendary Tactics.
Ark Nova, giant box
Yes,
here.
big box. Lots of fun.
Lots of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liked it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
But let's
an
start
early-
with some of the, we usually go through a few different ideas here. So first of all, theme.
Theme. So you're building your zoo.
Yep.
And it's got a neat kind of.
But does it
it's
feel
got
like
this-
you're building a zoo? That's the question.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's more like you were like the developer of the zoo.
Yes.
Like it's a little bit
Yeah.
more behind. It's definitely like a behind the scenes kind of feel of
Yes.
the zoo, right? You're
Yes.
not. You're not just. It's not just like a light-hearty thing.
Yeah,
there,
you're not.
right?
Yeah, it's not a kid's game.
No.
There's no.
No,
Yeah,
no,
for
no,
Sure.
this
It's
isn't
not
like
a
a
kid's
little-
eye view of like, because it's weird because when you actually fill the enclosures, you just kind of flip them over.
Right.
And that's it. Like you don't
Yeah.
get to place little animals or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
It's-
And there's a bit of a process
Yes.
to actually getting your zoo built, which is actually
Yes.
like a layer of probably
Yeah,
like.
but
you
it's
know-
more of an operational level,
Very much so.
big picture strategic version of building a zoo.
Yeah,
But, yeah. So yeah, I thought the theme works pretty well. I feel
Yeah.
like it tackles a bunch. Actually, it's much broader than I expected because I was thinking, oh, you buy animals and you put them in the enclosures and whatever.
Right.
But there's all sorts of things like you're actually contributing towards conservation efforts. You're also putting in different research at universities, and you're hiring different specialists.
And
in
you're even having to
different
like
fields.
build the areas like the enclosures for the animals to get into, right?
Yeah,
So
which is more along the lines of what I was expecting the game to be. It was just that, but
Right.
there's a lot going
there's
on.
a lot more, a lot of layers.
Yes, yes.
Which does actually lend towards it being a bit of a brain burner.
Yes,
At
which
times.
leads into mechanisms. So what did you
Right.
think of the mechanisms of the game?
There was so the one that I really did like was the whole idea of taking
You mean these?
your actions.
Yes.
Right, and the actions kind of shift. So once you take an action, it kind of it
Goes to the
shifts
end
from
of
a
the line.
one. There's 1 through 5 choices.
Yep.
And when you take any you can take any action you want, but then it goes from whatever position it's in to the bottom of the pile.
Yes. And the
then
longer
it-
you wait, the more effective that action becomes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought that was a really clever mechanic. I also really liked in the scoring mechanic how you're going in 2 different directions.
Yes.
Right. There's 2 different scoring tracks that kind of are in reverse, and it's when they crisscross is when you kind of end the final phase of the game.
Yes. Yeah.
How about you, Nato? What struck you?
Yeah. Again, I love that card mechanic. Not only just how you have them set up and then you move one to the end once you take it, but also that you can upgrade.
Yeah.
And you can
true.
choose better quality role, like more effective roles as the game goes on. And there may be. I find in a lot of games I don't get to upgrade them all. Like you get usually 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah.
But you don't get to upgrade all of the cards. So you do have to make some decisions as to which abilities you want to implement and use going forward. So I thought that was a really neat mechanic. I actually kind of like the whole aspect of contributing towards conservation efforts and taking that bigger picture and the research. There was a lot of really neat things, but I have to say the simple mechanic, but it really shines.
So clever.
Yeah.
So clever.
That's
And now I did find, how did you find the number of, because I found 5 at points, there's 5 different actions, and sometimes that can, like there was a few that I found I had to sort of separate and keep clear on what each of those actions were.
Yeah, I think they're distinct, but there's definitely some, the association action. They've got weird names basically.
Right.
So the
versus
association
versus the sponsorship,
Yeah.
right? And I think those were 2 in particular for me. I'm like, all right, I gotta just keep those sorted in my mind.
Right.
And what
the
they're tackling.
association, which allows you to do an association task. What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's,
And I think as far as the game goes, there were points in the game when things like that would creep up. Oh, what? I know what that is, or I have an idea what that is, but now clarifying it or keeping it straight.
yeah, the terminology can be a bit overwhelming, and the iconography as well.
And there's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it.
Yeah, and if you look at some of these cards here, all across the top, right, all that iconography does, and the bottom at times, does have different meanings and associations, right, that you have to be aware of and be familiar with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That said, once you know them, it's fine. But in the first couple games, there's a few cards that came up. I'm like, I'm not buying that card because I don't actually know what it does.
What's it gonna do?
Yeah, pick something else. So components.
Well, and I was just gonna. That was a beautiful lead-in because I was gonna just talk about the card deck, and it kind of leads to like the game mechanic in some ways, is because this card deck, I believe there's over 150 cards in this deck. It is not small.
Oh, no.
Okay, and so this is what you're drawing from. You will never have the same game twice.
No. Oh no.
You will never have the same game. You won't. This is not a okay. I'm going to replay that game again because it won't happen because there's just too many variables.
Yeah.
Which is I get that I would say it's a good thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like unlimited replayability, right?
Yes. There may be creatures you end up never seeing.
Again,
You know,
right?
even though you get through a bunch of that deck, you may never see them, and so that's.
But it can also lead to some situations like you mentioned. I don't know what that card does, right? Where you have to kind of go and like re-rule some things, or go to the rules checkbook, or the and sort of dig deeper.
Yeah. And the card stock's normal. There's lots of wooden cubes and little wooden people, and they're not meeples, but they're kind of like, I don't know, I think they're people, and cylinders and all that stuff. And you got nice heavy tokens for the enclosures.
Yep.
Nothing
I actually love the different shapes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think the different shapes of the zoo. So you sort of have to puzzle out your own, and you'll get a map, and then you have to sort of puzzle out how you're going to fit all the enclosures. And there's two different sides depending on the game you play, and you have to sort of puzzle out how you're going to fit your different enclosures, your different animal enclosures, onto your particular zoo footprint.
Yes.
So that's kind of a neat.
And if I did have one complaint about the components, this I found a little bit flimsy. It would have been nice to. Now, arguably, maybe if they'd had them all mounted, it would have been too thick in the box and so forth. Because there's a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's fine if that's the case. But it would have been nice to have some mount. I always like mounted boards, and especially if they have the little depressions where you can.
Oh, the inset.
Yeah, the inset things where you can slot in things. I think that would have been much more satisfying from that point. But other than that, everything is very competently made.
Put together. Yeah. Look, it's decent. Looks good.
Yep.
There's nothing that would besides that part maybe that would turn me off.
Yeah. Now overall gameplay. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say it took a few games to sort of get into the rhythm of how the game plays.
Yes.
It's not. Don't expect to sit down and like on your first play you play everything perfectly. I would say.
Yeah, no way.
Right, and we sat down 2, 3, 4 times with this and really sunk our teeth into it, and by the end of it, I think we had a good handle on, and then we played a bunch more.
Yep.
But I would say when we played, I appreciated the digital version.
Yes. Oh, the digital version, if you have a chance. Once you've kind of gotten a handle on it, then playing digitally, where it does all the housekeeping for you.
Exactly.
It's great. Although it can make you a bit lazy in terms of learning what the actual housekeeping is.
That is true.
But it is a great way to play it. And you can really play a game in about maybe an hour?
Yeah.
Hour and a bit?
Yeah.
Which, if you're playing this with multiple players, it'll be a good 3 hours probably.
And you need to settle in because people are going to get, I guess, analysis paralysis.
Yes.
It's prone to that,
yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
I would say that is one thing because we did a bunch of 3 players playthroughs, and at different points we would hit that wall.
Yes.
And even when I was shocked to see you hit it at 1 or 2 points, and I thought, NATO never hits analysis paralysis, and there he is. He's like, he was really stewing on it. So it can happen.
Yeah, you're just trying to make the best of what you have, and there's always different ways, different directions you can go, which I like. So.
And with the card mechanic that we mentioned earlier, you're always trying to sort of plot out in across the bottom of your game board as your 1 through 5, but you're always trying to plot out the sequence.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's half of it, I think, is getting that sequence just right, so that you're maximizing the efficiency of each action you take.
Yeah, but make no mistake, it's a very thinky game.
Yes.
And it does require a fair amount of effort on the part of the players, not only to learn it, but then actually to play it. And there's lots of great decisions to make, but I would say this is a heavier game overall. Maybe not on the very, very high end, but on the high end of medium, say.
Right.
It's definitely, there's a lot going on. So
there is.
Just general upside, downside.
So I think I would think, like the theme, love the replayability factor, but I think that what we just mentioned about the meatiness of the game could be a hindrance for some.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is designed for people who love, I think, heavier Euros.
Right.
like your Terra Mystica players, your
Yeah.
Spirit Island players, something like that, they would dig this. And is there a downside for you?
So that probably would be it, just the weighty factor.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to be able to, and maybe the analysis on the different the iconography could be a
Yes.
hang up. Like, I could see our buddy Flash maybe not loving
yes.
the iconography.
Yeah.
He's not one for that.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it is one where again, it makes sense once you know it, but the iconography can be pretty heavy. Now the cards themselves are actually pretty good, because what they'll do is they'll give you something, but then they explain what it is right
Yes,
here. So
yes.
they don't leave you totally hanging. Like in Race for the Galaxy, where you're basically like, if you don't understand,
You are
it-
clueless.
Yeah,
You are
exactly. You
clueless.
have no idea.
And one thing I do love, actually, this is a little side point that the game does as an upside for sure, is it really introduces you to a lot of different animal characters.
Yeah.
So you can kind of you just kind of feel like you've got the you got the long-billed vulture, or you got the sun bear, right, or the Indian cobra.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and even like, so for example, for the Indian cobra, you need to build the reptile, is like one of the requirements is that reptile house so that
Yep.
you can actually build it, right? And so that
Yeah.
they really kind of incorporate the animal's needs
Yes.
into the game too, which is a really
Yeah.
neat neat piece of this game. How
Absolutely.
about you? Upside, downside?
For me, I think it's a fun game. I didn't necessarily love it though. For some reason, I don't even know why, but I enjoy it. But it's not a game that I'm eager to get to the table all the time. Maybe because I know it's a heavier kind of thing. It's going to be a lot of potentially 3 to 4 hours
Commitment, yep.
and so forth. I guess if I had to name why that's the case, I would say that the ending feels a bit anticlimactic.
Right.
Because you get kind of towards the end, and it doesn't feel like it's building towards something. It feels
Right.
almost like just like it's winding down. It doesn't build to a climax in the way that a lot of games do. But I do like all the different creatures and all the different directions you can take. I would say there's an element of luck as well. If you can pivot to some extent, but if you go all in on, you get some cards which are like, hey, you should focus on birds or something, and then there's just not a lot of birds that
Right.
come out.
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck in
Yeah,
a way, and you,
Yeah.
and you can be hindered, especially early on, if you're pick a direction and it happens to be kind of a wrong one. It can just take a while to pivot, and by then you can be done.
And sometimes finding that direction is tricky.
Yes. Yes.
Especially early game.
Yes.
And that was one point that I noticed most of the games we played. You get a hand of cards,
Yep.
and it's now make something of it. But the deck is so big and varied and deep,
Yes.
right, that to try and make something of your starting hand
Yeah.
is difficult.
It can be. It can feel that way. Now, it's a long enough game that I don't think a bad starting hand will sink you. But if you do pick a direction and it doesn't happen to gel through no fault of your own, I think you could fall behind versus someone that happens upon some great cards
Yeah.
that just get some good synergies going early.
Right.
And there's may not be much you can do about that.
So it may be prone to that problem.
Yeah, but that's that would be the only downside I could think of. So.
That's true.
But overall, your thoughts?
Overall, I would play it again, but like you two, I would probably tend toward the digital version.
Yeah.
Just because it's cleaner, it's the bookkeeping's taken care of.
Yeah.
We could get a game done in an hour and a half easy. Whereas this is more of a commitment if you're sitting down. But if you have a games night and you just want to chillax and you got a bunch of like relatively decent gamers that are wanting to
Yes.
fire up a little cardboard, this would not be a bad choice at all.
For the right crowd, I think it would be a great game that you get a lot of mileage out of.
And actually, you are going to attempt to prove that theory correct because
Yes.
you're taking this game up in this coming weekend
Yes.
to some gamers.
To some people that I would say are medium level gamers. I'm going to try this out and see how it goes. So
You're
I'll keep you
going
posted.
to so you have to let us know how that goes.
Yeah.
Hopefully it goes well. So anyway, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Ark Nova and what you think about it, and anything that you've observed with the game. And in the meantime, don't forget to get out there
Get gaming.
and be legendary.